Well, thank you, Maggie and Lisa and Savvy Ladies for this great opportunity. I'm delighted to be part of the conversation. I really appreciate it. I thought we would just kind of jump right in and talk a little bit about, why I chose this subject to talk about because I see a lot of people, a lot of individuals that are struggling financially, and although it seems somewhat simplistic because maybe they don't have enough money coming in or it's going out. It's really much more complicated than that. And so many of the questions that I'm going to pose today in the webinar um, are many of the same questions that I ask my clients all the time because we all know that money is a very complicated issue. And money takes into account not just the tangible aspects of money coming in and going out and budgeting, but also the emotional aspects of money that often catches people off guard. And if they don't ask themselves some of the deeper questions that I'm going to talk about with you guys today, they really miss an opportunity to not only unravel the emotions that often push their buttons and make them purchase the things or do the things they do around financial decisions, but also prevents them from really understanding their more complicated relationship with money. So on that end, I'd like to get started. And the four things that I really want, the four things for a takeaway today that I really want to make sure that we discuss, or I discuss with everybody, is that they will walk away with a better understanding of your relationship with money, exploring how your attitude and values about money affects your decisions, learning to identify those emotional triggers that we all have that influence our financial choices, and also finding ways to become more transparent with yourself about your relationship with money, providing an opportunity to kind of get real and really understand what your relationship is with money and how that affects your decisions that you make. So I wanted to start off with, what is your relationship with money? And when I ask this question to my clients, they often look at me kind of quizzically because they're not really sure what I'm talking about or really what that means. And what we share when we talk about in therapy is, um, exploring how we establish and formed our relationship with money. And where that begins is with our family, our first family. And in psychology, talk we call that our family of origin, and our family of origin really is our first family. Predominantly our parents, our siblings, and they're the people that our parents are the ones that really shape our views and values about money, because every day we're watching our parents or caretakers, what have you. Um, manage their money or not manage their money. And we're being exposed to a lot of different ways in which money affects people and their families. And it also, those exchanges during our as we develop and grow and we're in this family, it helps us to understand how important money is or isn't. So here's a couple of examples that I post. For example, maybe we've experienced our parents arguing over money, or where maybe we have a life where money really wasn't a problem. We did to take vacations, buying the school uniform, buying the class ring, the school supplies, getting new clothes. It really wasn't a problem. Or in some other ways, simply paying the bills or staying on top of our bills and our responsibilities was a problem. And then we start to form our own opinions and values and beliefs about money. And so as we watch our parents experience these things in everyday exchanges through conversations, or maybe our parents are sharing some things about money, how to save, how to, put money aside for retirement, maybe going to school, we start to really, even subconsciously, get an idea of really what money means to us. Even if we're not directly impacted by that, we're also sometimes indirectly impacted by that. And so these life experiences really shape our values and our belief systems about money. And then as we get older, as we go about our life and so forth, we still carry a lot of those values and beliefs. And what's important is that it's not just our parents, our first families or relationship with money, but it's also our parents, right? And maybe how our parents were raised and coming from different generations, what money meant to them and so forth. So these are all the little things that are kind of trickling down throughout our life that we're observing and that we're taking in, and that really help to formulate our belief system about money and the value that we put on money. So when I'm working with clients for them to get a better understanding about their relationship, I ask these questions to them. What did your parents teach you about money? Did they have a lot of debt? Did you have like disposable income or what they might feel is like extra income? How do they view the debt? Was it all bad? Was it good? Um, were they struggling? Were there bills laying around the kitchen table? Were there credit cards that were hard to pay off? And then, lots of times, you know, they, they didn't have a lot of money, but it was important that their parents presented that they did have a lot of money, or that they were trying to keep up with everybody else. And so their parents might have extended their credit and done things that maybe they really shouldn't have done, or taken vacations where they really maybe shouldn't have taken. And those types of experiences really impact us as we grow up. And so then, like I said, that we carry these beliefs, these values into our adulthood. So when you want to explore your relationship with money and its impact on your financial decisions, we look at, when you answer those questions, what are the answers to those questions? Um, and when you look at those answers, when you ask them and then you write them down, how do they impact your view on money as you've gotten older? Have you carried over those same values and beliefs that your parents have? Do you live paycheck to paycheck? Do you live beyond your means? Do you have a lot of credit card debt? Um, do you believe that you should, pay off your credit cards and that type of thing? These are the types of questions that when people are talking about, I got this budget, or most of the time they don't even have a budget. They're trying to figure out why they're making some good money, maybe, and they don't really have any money to show for that. And if if you if you're never told them how to get out of debt or anything, they or how to manage their money, they just kind of wing it and try to figure things out as they go along. And so when you look back at those questions and those answers, your family of origin, what impact did they have on your life? And what does it say about yourself? And and sometimes answering those questions really will put you down a path of some deeper exploration for yourself. So there's those types of questions that give you some tangible answers. But the other part of this is that um, money and emotion, right? How many of us have gone out and just spent something? We had a bad day, we're upset, we're happy, you know, we're celebrating, we're doing something, and we go off and we purchase something. It could be clothes, it really could be anything. We could go out with our friends more often. And so when we try to unravel where they are financially and what's motivating their decisions, we really have to talk about the emotion of spending and the emotion of money, and asking people. I ask my clients, what they were feeling at that time, where they were. um, Did they, how do they go about making purchases? Is it in the moment? Is it impulsive? Do they emotionally check in before they slide their credit card and make another purchase? And here's a really important question that I ask people when we're trying to understand more deeply their relationship with money is it a need or a greed, right? So is it a need of, yes, I'm going to go on this job interview and I need, some nicer clothes. I don't really have anything. And I really want to make sure I present myself because I really want this job. It's going to provide me, a better opportunity. Or is it just kind of like a greed? Well, I have all these shoes and I have all these clothes, or I've gone out several times already with my friends, but I want to do it even though I probably realize that I shouldn't do it. And there's just a really big difference. I, you know, Lots of people, when I ask them, do you feel you deserve all that you buy? What I mean by that is that um, some people will say, I've worked with lots of people who said, well, I've had a long day at work. Maybe I should go off and spend this money going off and eating dinner and drinks and so forth. It was like a long day, even though maybe I couldn't afford it. And um, and so sometimes it's about if every time purchasing something is an option, right? Every time you're feeling a certain feeling, or if you feel you're always entitled to buy something new, if that's always an option to say yes to those things, then you'll always say yes, rather than learning how to take some of those things off the table, and learn how to take some of those options about purchases off the table, and really getting in touch with your feelings about um, do you really want to buy this? Is this a really important purchase for yourself? So I have this picture of this woman here with lots of credit card, and I just really want to touch upon briefly, so I stay on track with debt. Right now, when someone's relationship with money comes up and really impacts their decision, I mean, it really impacts how they make their financial decisions. Most of the time, there's debt is always part of that conversation, right? So when people are struggling financially, you can infer that, and I can infer that there's going to be some debt, varying levels, but some debt. And like some of these things, I'm sure lots of people can relate to the psychological impact of having significant debt, of how we feel about ourselves. We feel out of control. It prevents us from living the life that we really want to. People tell me that they're up at night. I mean, money is one of the biggest contributors to divorce. Money is one of financial problems are one of the biggest contributors to personal and professional difficulty in relationships. It's really one of the most stressful things that people experience in life every day. And so even though we try to compartmentalize that and kind of contain that, it's always on our mind, right? When we have debt and we have financial problems, it's like the black cloud that never leaves us. It just follows us around. Can I go out for that? Can I do this little thing? How much money do I have? And have debt really clouds a lot of our decisions and makes sometimes we make wrong decisions based on the debt that we have. Um, you can all read this, but I just want to touch upon that. Um, there's a lot of shame and embarrassment when it comes to debt. People are very shameful when they have a lot of debt. They are very uncomfortable. They don't want to share it. They minimize it. If they're talking to people, they might say they don't have much. Maybe they have a lot. And between shame versus guilt is, guilt is I've done something wrong. I shouldn't have purchased that. Shame is I'm a bad person. And it's more of a value that we place on ourselves. And that is really what drives a lot of these strong emotions when it comes to money. Even when people are talking to me, it takes them a while to warm up and really talk about that because they feel they're going to be judged, which they're not, but they feel they're going to be judged. And they feel that they have a lot of shame associated with that. So moving on to nickel and dime. So there was a great book out called Nickel and Dime, if you ever get a chance to read it. But what it really comes down to is when people are going to sit down and do their budget, they really have no idea like how much they're really being nickel and dimed. $3 for that newspaper every day, $6 for that Starbucks latte, the Ubers, and it may not seem a lot in the beginning, $4, $6, $5, but if people were to go back and add up what they spend on a weekly or monthly basis, they're astounded. And if you take that times 12 months, you will be surprised how much money you're spending. People are giving to Starbucks, $6 a day, $180 a month. 200 times 12 is what, $2,400. That's a lot of money. And then you add in the taxis, the drink here and there and that type of thing, and you really are being nickeled and dimed, and that adds up to a lot of debt. So real quickly, Anna's story, then I want to get into how you can recover from all of this. So Anna, that's not her real name. I'm working with her for quite some time. She's been on the circular track of trying to get back on, financially get back into a better place, has a lot of debt, but she was doing an exact thing. She was being nickeled and dimed. She did a lot of Ubers. She did a lot of the Starbucks, going out for breakfast and lunch, didn't cook at home a lot. And, $30 a day, $40 a day on food, the Ubers. She would work late at night. She couldn't get up in the morning. She'd be running behind schedule to get to work, so she couldn't take the train, so take the Uber. She, didn't have any coffee at her house, so she would stop at the Starbucks. She didn't spend any time preparing and purchasing food like on the weekend, so she'd have to buy a lot of her lunches. And when she sat down, went through all of her receipts and started looking at things, she was shocked at the amount of money, that she was spending every month on these things, and realized, wow, if I went out and I spent money at the grocery store, I wouldn't have to buy my lunch. If I went out and bought a coffee maker or made coffee at my house, I would save all that money. If I could get up earlier, go to bed a little bit earlier and get up earlier so that I get to work on time, I could take the train and I wouldn't be taking a taxi. So little by little, she's been working on getting a better plan and really taking financial responsibility and trying to get out of credit card debt when she has a lot and some medical bills. And it just kind of added up where she would just kind of hide them, stick all the bills in a box or in a drawer somewhere and pretend that, she didn't have all those things and she really was denying the problem. But it really only manifests itself and makes things worse, right? It's going on. Nothing like that ever gets better. It just gets worse. So how do people take ownership? Well, first you got to make a financial commitment to yourself, right? You got to say, I need to make an investment in myself, in my future, today, the present, and the future. And I gotta embrace the calm time. When you're in a good headspace, when you feel calm and good, you should sit down and start to unravel all those bills, put them out on the table, right? Make a spreadsheet, kind of chip away at that. Maybe make a financial night for yourself that, once every 2 weeks or once a week, especially in the beginning, you sit down and look at your goals. Acknowledge the business side of life. I kind of facetiously said adulting. There's a business part of life that we all have to deal with, whether we want to deal with it or not. And creating a financial future for ourselves, we have to really embrace it and own it and say, what do I want that financial future to look like? If I'm here and I want to be there, how am I going to get there? And what does it look like for myself? And don't be so judgy towards yourself. You're struggling, and just taking the first step of wanting to make an investment in yourself and do better and be more fiscally responsible. That's really what you should be focusing on. And short and long-term goals, right? So short-term goals might be, by the end of the month, I want to have this budget straightened out. By the end of the month, I want to go through all my bills. By the end of this week, I want to have these things, kind of in my spreadsheet. Long-term goals might be, in 6 months, I might want to have certain bills paid off, or certain credit cards. And then you kind of create that Excel spreadsheet, you create that budget. You really take stock, right? You really are transparent with yourself about where's all my money going? Because lots of times we have no idea where our money is going. It just kind of disappears. Do a purge, come clean and take stock, right? Like I said, sit down, look at the budget, be realistic. Numbers don't lie, right? The numbers are there. Numbers are numbers. We can't change them. That's just what they are. Don't expect to pay off, $10,000 of debt or something in 2 months. Make it very realistic. That way you're going to be You're going to empower yourself, and you're going to feel good about the goals that you've set for yourself. And you're not going to have these unrealistic expectations that you're going to be able to do all these things, because if you do that, then that's only going to create more frustration, right? Um, Look at your emotions around money. Name them. What's going on? Are you embarrassed? That's why you're shopping. You're going out. You're overwhelmed. You're stressed. You've got anxiety. You're depressed. What is the emotion that's fueling that purchase? What is that emotion that's driving you to make that financial decision? And like I said before, go back to, is this a need or a greed? Is it something you really need, or is it something that you're doing because, well, maybe you don't want to look bad, or you're uncomfortable saying no? And that's really important. And in looking at your future, your financial future, with optimism, but also a realistic and a pragmatic view of, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to be, this is where I need to be, and what steps am I going to take to get that? And um, ask yourself, going back to the very first questions that I posed, right? What is your relationship with money? Go back and look at your family of origin. Go back to that first family. Go back to those values and beliefs that you were raised. Are they working? Are they not? Where are your strengths in all of that? Where are your strengths financially? Where are your weaknesses? What needs to be tweaked? What's really working really well? How do I envision my financial future with money? What do I really want that to look like? So, from a solution focused perspective, you say, okay, my solution is, I want to be in a financial situation that looks like this, and you visualize that. And this is what it looks like in your mind. And then that's your end game. And then you take a look at and you think about, what are the small steps I have to take to get to that end game, right? Because ultimately I want to be here, whatever that might look like. And in order to get to that place, you've got to do the short-term goals and the long-term goals to get to your final destination of where you want to be. And that's what you do. You create your end, and then you support that end by doing the small steps. Um, Look, my parting thoughts, I say, don't be an ostrich, stick your head in the sand. I mean, you can do that, right? But it only magnifies the problem. We've all done that in different ways in our life. But when we stop doing that, we realize we're really not any further along. We're just, still have the same problems, still have the same issues. And making those necessary changes in your relationship will help you to feel more centered, empowered, and determined. And when I work with people, the very first thing, like I previously said, was, first you got to make an investment in yourself. First, you got to say, I want to do this. I'm important enough. I really want to invest the time and the energy in myself to get me to a better place financially. And that is the very first step that you need to take. And by doing that, that will allow you to take the other necessary steps as you go down this path. And that's it. I know that was a lot of information. I think that, wrapping those things up is that, um, it first starts off with answering those all important questions. Um, I did that for myself. I looked at my upbringing, my father's relationship with money, my mother's relationship with money, because they were somewhat different. What did I pull from both of them? What did I take with me? What do I want to leave behind? Um, you know, and I really had to answer a lot of those hard questions for myself. And in doing that, I've been able to help other people answer those same questions, and those answers create foundation. And then you have that foundation of those answers, and then it's tapping into the emotional part, looking at the incidental nickel and dime purchases that we make when they add up to the bigger stuff, and then taking it all together and saying, okay, this is my situation, because the situation is what it is, right? It's not going to change at that point. And then what can I do to take the necessary steps to recover? Taking a proactive, pragmatic approach to getting myself on a better page. And I end with, be intentional about the choices you make. The effects are long lasting. And that's it with everything in life, but none more than money, right? Because money makes the world go round. Money affects us in ways that we're not even aware of most of the time, and it's really a game changer in our life. So we want to make sure that the choices that we make are intentional, and that if they're going to be long lasting, they are good. And I think that's it for my presentation, my webinar.
Thanks, Dr. D. We had some questions come in for you, and I'll remind
Sure.
everyone, if you have a question, you can use the chat box, or you can email info@savvyladies.org. And the one question we had come in is, I've noticed that I'll deprive myself of shopping for weeks and then give in and buy a lot of things at once. I think it might be because I feel like I've missed out on things and it's a reward for my good behavior for weeks. Is that considered an emotional trigger? And if I can recognize it, what are some things I can do to stop it?
Well, answering the first question part of the question, is that emotional trigger? I would say yes, by and large, I think that is. I think that one of the ways, it's like an all or nothing, right? So either you're doing everything to the nth degree and not buying anything, right? It's no different than not eating anything that's junky and then saying, oh, I haven't eaten anything that's junky, I'm going to go off and eat everything. So, and then you feel bad because you feel like, oh, I've done all those things. I've kind of prevented myself, and I need a reward now, rather than saying, well, why is it necessary to like not give yourself anything? And can you maybe parse that out a little bit differently? Can you say, um, here's a small reward. Like every couple of weeks, I'm going to do a small reward for myself, right? I'm going to say, if I do a couple good weeks, then I get a small reward, versus rather than depriving myself, because just in asking the question, right, you realize that that's not working, because it's like you're not giving yourself anything, any kind of reward, and then you're rewarding yourself for depriving yourself, right? So I might suggest, maybe looking at it a little bit differently, right? Not going so long without giving yourself something. And then can you say, oh, I've got a couple needs I like to, I have, or I've got a couple things I just want to kind of go off and buy willy-nilly for myself. Can you maybe space that out a little bit more for yourself so that it's not so either or? I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Another
Hmm.
question we had come in is, I have a lot of debt, but I'm working toward getting rid of it. How can I minimize the bad feelings and embarrassment I have around my debt?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question, and a lot of people experience that, but I think that instead of um, instead of like focusing in on those bad feelings, thinking about how can you change your mindset to remind yourself that look at the changes that you are making. I mean, it's almost you can have like mindfulness, right? Mindfulness is accepting how you feel and not casting judgment on yourself. So in the moment you're feeling shameful or embarrassed, you're like, okay, this is how I feel. I'm not going to sit there and tell myself why I'm feeling that way, because I know why I'm feeling that way. But also, do you think you can maybe also start to take a different path and to yourself, okay, I feel that way, but look what I'm doing right now. I'm on a path. I'm taking care of my debt. I'm paying it off. And how can I start to reward or feel good about some of the positive things that I'm doing with my life, instead of focusing in on those negative feelings, right? Because lots of us have those feelings about having the debt, but we forget to remind ourselves of all the good things that we're doing, instead choosing to focus in on those negative feelings. And good for you, for doing that. Yeah, it's great.
Okay, great, thanks. And another question is, my boyfriend and I have very different relationships with money because of our upbringings. Have you
Mhm.
seen couples deal
Yeah.
with these differences successfully, or are we headed for a lot of money disagreements?
Well, that's another great question. Actually, all three great questions. Well, um, I think I've worked with a lot of couples. They come from very different backgrounds, and I will share that it's really important that you and your boyfriend find a way to have a conversation about money, and maybe each of you taking some of these questions and asking them of yourself, and then having a conversation, like an exploratory conversation with one another, and saying, what are the things that we agree on, what are the things that we disagree on, because that will become a very contentious um, um, issue in the relationship. It will follow you really everywhere. And when couples don't resolve any kind of issue, it's the thing that follows them everywhere. And so in this situation, the money is always going to be the issue. And you could be fighting about anything, the dishwasher, and money will somehow make its way back because that issue has not been resolved. So I might suggest that you and your boyfriend sit down and talk about some of these things, and um, are some of the differences salvageable? Um, and how big are the differences, right? And are each of you willing to maybe compromise or concede a little bit, or extend the olive branch a little bit as to what the differences are? And I think that maybe once you have some of those answers, you'll be able to determine what it's going to be like in the future. The most, I will say this real quick, the most important thing is, can you have a conversation about it? Can you just talk about it in an open, trusting environment, right? Can you just can you just start the discussion? That's really key.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to
All
thank you,
right.
Dr. D, for a great presentation, and your contact information is here, which we'll be sending out as well if you didn't have a chance to write it down. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and thanks again, Dr. D.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye bye.